happy Thursday to everybody. Happy Thursday. First, if you're on here, get those likes up, please. Get those likes up, tag anybody, or share this discussion with someone you think may find it interesting. I'm pretty excited about today's topic, church hurt. Many of you guys, I feel like most people, especially those of us in the Black community, we've had our experiences in church, out of church, for better, for worse. And I've talked to many of people who have had not necessarily positive experiences and have their own church hurt, if you will, to deal with. And so I'm really excited to have a dear friend of mine, a sister, also First Lady, a pastor's wife, come in and talk about this subject that I think many of us deal with. Like I said, especially women. I mean, just people in general. Like, I just feel like this whole topic applies to people across the board. So, no, we're taking a little turn of events. We've been focusing a lot on relationships the last few weeks, but I thought I wanted to touch upon this because, again, this is something that many people do deal with. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my special guest. Also, for those of you coming on, what's up, JoJo? Shout out to JoJo in the building. You're right. I am actually a little early. But that's okay. That's okay. So I'm gonna bring on my special guest, and then we're gonna get going. I see. I thought church hurt was somebody hits you in the back of the head with a hymn notebook. That could be one version of it. Oh, that's hilarious. I got people in these comments. A few of them always make me laugh. Hi.
Hi.
So you guys, I have my, again, dear friend, Janelle McKellar. She's also, I like to call her First Lady. But her and her husband are over a new ministry out in Texas that's been really growing and getting popular. So I thought she would be great to talk about this, as she has her own experiences, her own unique story that I find really insightful. So thank you for being here. And before we really get into the topic, would you mind just telling us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, what you're about, all that stuff?
What do I do? I'm a woman of many hats. Where do you want me to start? I mean, do you want me to start where?
Whatever's on your heart. There's not a right or wrong answer. It's just tell us about yourself.
I don't like to just talk about I feel like, first I'm a daughter. That's what I'm learning to be, because I used to be very achievement oriented. I went to school for film, and I have a film degree, and I was working in with some major Bay Area hip hop artists in California at the time. But I grew up in church, and I was straddling the fence of believing that God was real, but still wanting what I wanted, and living a very worldly life. And so I was on the up and up, and doing, working on music videos and doing music videos for some of these hip hop artists, or covering their concerts and different things. And, my husband, or he's now husband, but he was somebody I was dating at the time. He would call me out on it, because he was looking for a real believer. He was looking for the real God, and he saw so much hypocrisy in the church that it just caused him to doubt, but he was always searching for truth. So when he saw me coming along claiming I was a Christian, and I was very worldly, just like the world, just doing what I thought was best and what I wanted to do, he called me out on it, even though he wasn't he wasn't all in with God, but he called me out on it. And so it started to get me to think. And so I ended up stepping away from it for a little bit. And I was like, okay, God, what would please you? What should I work on? What project should I work on? And so then there was just something that laid on my heart about doing a documentary in third world countries about street children who live, completely without their parents. They've been abused. They run away from home at 10. They're addicted to crack. I couldn't imagine children living on their own, addicted to drugs. And so I went on this journey to Brazil, Costa Rica, and Cambodia to follow these stories. And it really impacted my walk with God. when I got back, it was very soon after my now husband and we ended up getting engaged, and it was very kind of controversial thing because he grew up in the streets, and he was an alcoholic. He was a major cannabis grower. And I was even helping him at the time.
This is back when it was illegal. I mean, it's illegal now out in California.
Yeah, it was illegal at this time, but I was helping him with money to get it started. And he was very smart at the same time. So he was a senior systems engineer at Oracle, but he was also on on the weekends, just hanging on the streets of Oakland and moving a lot of weight and of drugs. And so anyway, it was a very interesting dynamic. And so when he basically lost everything due to his alcoholism, he put himself into a military rehab. And during that time, we were broken up, but he was working his 12 steps and he was making amends. Yeah. And he, I was kind of like his only loyal person in his life because his family had disowned him and because of the life that he was living. And so I came to let him make amends, and I visited him just to support him because his mom had moved out of state. And it was that during that time we started rebuilding our friendship. And so it was a very critical time. And it was the first time I saw him consistently being stable, and I could see something deep inside of him that was calling out to like he had spiritual understanding, but he hated religion, and I could tell, like, he knew things that most people don't know, even though he wasn't with God. He wasn't like, going to church and, doing all, it was just, but he had an understanding that God was showing him even at an early age. And so I was drawn to that in him. And so what's crazy is God will flip things on its head, because if I'm growing up in church thinking I'm doing all the right things, trying to get him to just go to church. And God uses him to change my life completely. He will use the foolish things of this world to shame the wise. That's what he says in the word. So what happened was, we ended up getting engaged. He earned my parents' trust back. And when we got married, we still had bought in houses illegally, to grow this marijuana. And I just, it was his thing, but I still came into agreement with it. I somehow justified it, even though I was partaking in it, really. And so it was during that first year of marriage that was really difficult and really challenging, that as, it was just a challenging year. And we, God would never let us succeed in it because he had bigger plans for us. And so he would send these bugs to eat up the marijuana crop. And we were like, oh my gosh, there's $20,000, and our mortgage at the time was $5,000. Our electricity bill was $5,000. So it was $10,000 in expenses on $1 million home that we had to come up with every month. And so right around 9 months into our marriage, we were late on our mortgage because of these spider mites that were killing the cannabis. And we started going around to this church around the corner. I started bringing him down there. And he would go in high, and he hated worship. And one day we're just in the back of the church, and no one touched him. No one prayed for him. And he just starts crying and bawling his eyes out. And he's just like buckling at the knees, and he's falling to the ground. And he was on the ground for like 45 minutes straight. And I grew up in church. I went to Bible college for a couple of years. I had never seen anything like this in my life. He was just like, God, stop. It hurts. It hurts. I surrender. I just remember him saying, I surrender. I surrender. And somebody walked by us and said, you're never going to be the same. And so the whole church emptied out. He's still on the ground. I'm in the back of the church just waiting for him. And he gets up and he starts saying scriptures that he'd never even read before, that was in the word. He started, like, his colors were brighter, the smells were stronger, the sounds were stronger. It was like all of his senses were magnified, because it was oppression. It was spiritual demonic oppression that was that came out. He was delivered from, and he was filled with the presence of God. And so I was just very shocked and just, I just didn't know what to think of it. And, he comes home and he's just like, I'm getting rid of it all. Like, we're cutting all the plants down. We're probably going to foreclose on our house. And I'm like, well, what are we going to, yeah, we're going to foreclose on our house. What are we going to do? Like, this is our first year of marriage. I'm worried about what everybody thinks of me.
Mm-hmm.
He used to be an alcoholic. What are they going to think of me now, of my new husband? I'm so concerned about what the world thought. So he's like, it doesn't matter. He called all his friends in Oakland, and he was like, Jesus is real. I can't come into agreement with this. He's like, I'm burning all the equipment. And so sure enough, we foreclosed on the house, and my conviction wasn't there yet. I was just like, I wasn't all in with God. But I knew that he was strongly convicted and could see very clearly at this point. And so I just followed his resolve. And we moved to a very suburb area of the Bay Area. And he taught himself how to do smart home automation. That was, and in the midst of us losing our house, he was trying to become a contractor, which is really difficult in California because there's so many rules and regulations. And he had a long record of DUIs and gun charges and all these things. And so he had to take responsibility for all those things. And he said, yep, I admit, I take responsibility. I went into a program, and he just explained it all and took responsibility, and he was miraculously got his license. And so it was just lined up so perfectly that as we transitioned out of the cannabis world, we stepped right into, becoming a contractor and a smart home engineer in Silicon Valley, which is, tech central. And God just blessed that. He just blessed that business tremendously without no marketing, no advertising. We were able to purchase a house just 4 years later the right way. And I just remember all these miracles were happening that first year. My husband gave his life to God, and he was all in. And I became so jealous for the things of God in his life. I became so jealous, and I was like, gosh, I grew up in church. I've never seen the power. I've never seen miracles before. I've never seen transformation. And that's what God says he's about in the Bible. And so I'm like, I want what my husband has. Why? I don't get it. How come I'm not experiencing this? And so, it took me he would hold me accountable. Talk about hypocrisy, right? Such a big thing that we see in the church. And I was one of them. And he would be like, hey, your life does not line up to what I see of a believer that is sold out for God. This is what it looks like. And I can't even tell you, there's no difference in your life. You look exactly like the world, and nobody can see that there's any power, any liberation, any freedom in your life. And you're full of sin. And I'm just like, yeah, I just became really prideful and resistive to it. Cause I'm like, I invited you to go to church. I'm just like, what the heck? And I just was so clueless at the time. But I mean, as he was patient with me though, and he allowed me to go through my process, I just remember the light bulb went off one day. We were at a Bible study, or I was by a Bible study by my house by myself. And I remember reading something in Hebrews that said, if you abuse the license of grace, knowing the truth and still abuse the license of grace, there remains no more repentance for your sin. And I just, whoa, that's what I'd been doing my whole life, just thinking I could just do what I want. And there was God was going to cover all it. He was like, he knows I'm going to sin. It's all good. I'm all good with him. It doesn't matter. Had no conviction. I had no awareness of how I grieved God. And so that's when I just came home just dropped my bags, went into the bathroom, turned off the lights, got on my knees, bawled my eyes out crying. And just said, God, I just see it so clearly now. I am so, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I had grieved you. And somebody just said, why were you in competition with your husband? It wasn't I think it was more it wasn't competition per se. It was that like, if I believed in God so much and I believed he is who he says he is, and like, and he was like, he's a living God, but I've never experienced that tangibly, that he's a living God. But my husband, I like, it was like the book of Acts, like what you see in the Bible, like was playing out in his life. And I was like, it was just so impactful to me that this is a real God. Like, he's living and he's real. And who doesn't want more of God? If you believe in God, you're gonna want more of him. And so that's what I wanted. I felt more like I wanted more of him, like my husband, because I could see the freedom that he was walking in. I could see the joy he was walking in and the peace he was walking in. And so then it was, from that point on, it was really an adventure, because after I really like cried out from my soul, and for the forgiveness that he had already blessed me with, once I repented, that was like a dividing moment, because right after that, it was like I was seeing him as my, like, a tangible father, a tangible friend that spoke to me, and I could hear his voice and he would answer my prayers. And that's when it was like I have fully like decided I was going to pick up my cross and follow him. And so from that point forward, it was just my life has been like so different ever since. And so I realized that when I was such a hypocrite before, it was because like I had never, like, I believed in him, but I never decided to follow him. Like you can't be in two worlds at once. You can't serve two masters. It's impossible. It's directly opposed at each other. And so once I made the decision that I'm all in with you, God, that's when like the east is the darkness was like, as far as the east is from the west for me. It was like I was growing super fast, and I don't know, I guess I'll just like end that story right there. But
so, well, the great thing is you answered my first and second question. So
oh, Marla's on. Hi, Marla.
Guys, if you're on here, please get those likes up, tag anybody, or share this with someone who you think may find it interesting. We're talking about church hurt. I'm excited to have special guests on, Janelle McKellar, who is First Lady, pastor's wife, mother of four, just the overall very special, unique human being who has an incredible story. So her and her husband recently started a ministry out in Texas, and I thought she would have a lot to share about this whole topic. As you mentioned, you've been in church her entire life. So again, if you're on here, get those likes up. Thank you for sharing your perspective. So I think you kind of touched upon this, but I think it would be worth going more into detail. Why are Christians known to be hypocrites and phony?
I think like we live in such a like a culturally Christian society, or maybe in certain pockets, and that doesn't mean that, yeah, at least where I live, I'm living in the Bible Belt right now. So
right.
and let's just say like church culture, I think we like to label ourselves something. We believe we want to align ourselves with something that looks good and light, but that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that person is fully like surrendered and like has had the revelation of the disparity of their sin nature, and have like just like invited God into their heart and is fully like walking with them and surrendered to following him. I mean, we love to call ourselves that because we care so much about what people think. And so we just use that term very loosely. Like, I'm a Christian. I mean, I don't even say I'm a Christian anymore. I just say I'm a Jesus follower. I follow Jesus.
Yeah, because the term has such a you hit the nail on the head. There's cultural, right, and then there's the tradition, and then there's the reality of what it's actually supposed to be. But there's never been a time where I've really talked to somebody inside of the church, right, or outside of the church, and they say, oh, what do you think of when you think of a Christian or a Christ follower? And they think, oh man, those people are really loving, or they're really special. Never. I was talking to somebody the other day, and she told me before she gave her life to Christ, she didn't want to do it because she was like, I'm afraid if I become a godly person, I'm going to just judge everybody. I don't want to be judgmental. So I don't want to follow God because all the people that I know who follow God are judgmental or they're phony, you know? And far too many of us know that, have experienced that. And that's the reputation. And I'm like, that's horrible PR, first off. Second off, it's like, that's like, I think there's something to that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Appreciate.
yeah, I see we are rhetorically Christian. Yeah, rhetorically. And I'm like, even at that, like, if you just look at the basic things that this nation has done, and then you look at what the Bible even says, no way you could even call this. I don't want to go on a different tangent, but it's like, no way you could even say it's Christian just based upon basic fundamental practices. So to your point, there's a whole idea of, oh, I'm Christian because I go to this building every single week, versus what it actually means to be a Christ follower or be a follower of the way. Totally different.
Right.
So, yeah, well, shout out to Deanie. What up, Deanie? Thanks for being here. Again, guys, if you're on here, get those likes up, tag anybody, share this with someone who you think may find it interesting. Also, if you'd like to show support to the show, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Charday. You can also send in super chats. I will be sure to acknowledge all super chats. So we've just been talking a little bit about just church hurt. She's been sharing her experience. She has a more of a unique experience as now a pastor and a pastor's wife. You know, you pretty much did everything wrong. You did everything as far as finding a husband. You did it all the wrong way. You did everything that women shouldn't do, you know, dating an alcoholic, somebody who's a drug dealer. Like, you did all of the worst things. And literally by God's grace, you're here today and it's fine. Literally. But I'm like, I would not recommend anyone take your path.
He used, like, when I thought I was getting my husband saved, he used my husband to really get me saved. So it's amazing. It's amazing because you know why he does that? It's because God's trying to show that it's his power. It's not by our works that we're good with God. It's his power. And it's just depending on him, trusting him and humbling ourselves before him and saying, like, I'm flawed. Like, I need you. I need you. And so what better way to show his power than through, like, somebody that you would never think. You would just think they're a gangster, they're a murderer, they're a rapist, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you see them transform. It's like, you have to give credit to something greater than ourselves. You have
to. Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will say, honestly, now being on my own 12-step program and having done countless Bible studies and countless, you know, small groups. And of course, this isn't for everything, but just, if I'm just being honest, I've heard so much more humility and truth in some of those 12-step meetings than I've heard in certain Bible studies and in certain church gatherings. Of course, this hasn't been for everyone, but for many of them. And I've always found that really strange. I'm just like, why is it we can go in certain environments and hear more truth where we would expect not to hear it? And then now when we supposedly gather in the name of whatever, it can be a facade sometimes. And I know many people having experienced that, it just turns them off. They're just like, I don't want it, you know? And I know Jabbar, that was him too. He was like, I don't want anything to do with this, because his experience with religious people up to that point had been just that, you know, had been.
Jabbar is the name of.
Oh yeah, sorry, her husband. He's like, yeah, Jabbar is her husband. The one that she said really kind of got her on the path of being like, hey, I believe this thing. Like, this isn't just something I do. I actually really have the revelation of this thing. I don't want to live it out. But yeah, same thing. He was like, I don't want anything to do with God or any of this stuff, because all y'all are hypocrites. And that was his experience. So he said he's black. She said, wait. Actually, that's true.
Wait, what?
Like,
I missed that.
They said you gave yourself out when you said, moving away.
Oh, wait. That's funny. That's funny.
Oh, that's funny. Oh man, you're telling on yourself.
Yeah, although my husband says I'm definitely more hip than him. People like,
I guess it depends on the cause. Well, I always say what that 3%. I'm like, that 3% stay in the forefront.
Yeah, 3% African. So out of it.
You said, yeah, normally the most harsh and judgmental Christian is a reformed demon. Okay, so on to the next question. In your opinion, has the mainstream American church done a good job of representing the gospel and what it's about? Why or why not?
What, my church? What did you say?
Say
What was
the mainstream, just church?
Oh, mainstream.
Generally presented today, as it's generally understood today, would you say it's done a pretty good job of representing the gospel? Why or why not?
Okay, so I got to be careful with this question because I don't like, as my husband and I have gone through the journey of like seeing things that weren't God in the church, and it was really easy to just like call it out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like also God convicted us in a way to say like, hey, don't cut off your left arm, because that's still the body of Christ. And they still, whether, we're in sin or we got certain things off, we all got it off. The minute one person joins a church, it's going to be a fallen church, because every single person is fallen. If any person says they are without sin, they're a liar. That's what the Bible says. So so we've been very headstrong on like pointing things out, but very headstrong about it. But at the same time, this is what God showed us. It's about being the truth. It's about being what God is calling us to be, because that's going to be more impactful than saying, now it's one thing when there's like a false prophet or, something like, no, like you need to call that out. You need to call it out. And you do need to take things to people. Like sometimes like we'll like, sometimes there's a way to go about if there's somebody that is in sin, instead of when you uncover them publicly, sometimes that will do more damage than help. So it's very wise to go to the person directly first. If they're not listening, then you take a second person. If they're not listening, then you take it before the church. So that's what we're supposed to do. But I would say that we've created such a corporate pyramid in America. The American church looks like a company a lot of the times, looks like a corporation. And it's just the way that our society is structured. And it's actually such the opposite of what the Bible shows us what the gospel is. Jesus came like a servant. It was like an upside down pyramid. He's pushing the people up. He came to do he was washing the disciples' feet. That was the dirtiest job at the time. And he came, you know the story. He came on a donkey, the mother came on a donkey, no room for her. They were in like a stable with animals, a dirty place. That's where their the baby, the king of the Jews, the king of the world was born. I mean, how humble is that? He didn't want people to worship him like a king when he roamed the earth. He did life with his disciples. He wasn't all high and mighty. He wasn't all sitting on like a throne and just like, oh yeah, you got to work. Like he came to serve, not to be served. Like he came to serve and bridge people to the Father. That was his whole point. And so the Jews wanted to make him this political hero, this king, and they expected him to be a king. That's why they didn't recognize him at first. They thought he was going to come in this royal, entourage. Basically, it wasn't that. It wasn't what people thought it was. And so, does our church look like that? Does it look like we are? Like we're more concerned with the person versus the show? Does it look like we're more concerned with what happens in the secret place, praying privately with somebody that's in pain versus praying publicly in display whenever all eyes are on you and the television cameras on you and everything? Like what is happening in the secret place? I think God says he rewards us, and he'll justify us before man in the secret, from what happens in the secret place. And so he's like, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing when you're giving generously, for, you've already earned your reward, you've earned your reward, because everyone's like, oh, yes, we know what you did. We know that generous thing you did. And it's like, no, what are you doing in secret? That is Like, are we laying down our lives for one another? Are we, like somebody is going through like an abusive situation or a divorce or something, and they need a friend to come over and cry with them? Are we willing to get up and just go just like lay down our own desires, our own things that we got going on, to go and be with that person, to labor with that person, to come alongside of them? And so we can be so exhausted a lot of the time, extending ourselves out for the production, for the programs, and for the perfection of the details, for making sure that we have the babysitters, for the childcare, and all these things. We created a wheel that is very hard to sustain, and it takes a lot of our concentration and our efforts and our focus away sometimes from from the things that are the most important, and that is loving on people, discipling people, walking with people, getting in the grind with them. Like, what does that look like? I think it was just, there was a lot of things. Like, we went to a very big church at the time when we were growing. And, it was like, everybody's like, oh, are you not serving in this ministry yet? Like, oh, that was like a rite of passage, like that you needed to be serving in a ministry at some point. But it's like, what if God called you outside of the four walls? What if you're like, what if it looks different than what this picture of the corporate church looks like? That is God too. That is God. So oftentimes, there was things we would just kind of, we open up our home to people that were kind of falling through the cracks in the church, and we didn't really know what we were doing at the time. We were just loving on people. We were building connection with them. We were sharpening each other. We were having fellowship, like true fellowship and community. And that really bonded us deeply and grew. And we all grew in the Lord so tremendously. And it was because of those things in the secret place that wasn't out on a stage. We didn't have positions or titles or anything. We were just being sons and daughters of God. We were just loving on people and discipling people, just what God had told us to do. Very, very simply. It's very simple. And so because of what happened in the secret place, God started bringing us a lot of different people. He started we had all of a sudden, and we didn't even want to do like a house church meeting, because we were just had babies, and we knew that we already naturally were doing that. It just wasn't organized. But and then we had a baby, and we moved into a new townhome, but the next church we went to, they said, hey, we're doing this huge house church ministry, and we want you guys to start it. We want you guys to start one. And we're like, oh my gosh, I think this is God kind of prodding us to like, do what I've called you to do. Like, there's a grace for this season. And so when we did that, we had people from 60 different churches come through our house. We had people from all over the world that ended up coming to our house. And we were just this little secret, humble little church gathering, like house gathering. We didn't call it a church. We didn't advertise it. We would meet people one-on-one at the grocery store, whatever, and like build relationships, saying, you should come over Wednesday night. You should come over Wednesday. And it's in that secret place. It was just training ground where God matured us, grew us. There was a lot of challenges, ups and downs. There was miracles that we saw, transformation, people that are in our life, forever. They're going to be in our life forever because of the way that the bond that happened from walking together so intimately. And so that's what I think we just need to see more of that will go. It's more simpler than people think. That's going to go a way longer way than building these big buildings and these big productions. And, like, I know there's a place for sometimes the macro church where you have to, maybe it's a regional prophet or a national prophet that is sharing something for the nation or something. I know there is a place for it, but I feel like it can be lopsided at times where, what are we doing one-on-one with people? Jesus only had 12 disciples. He wasn't speaking to a whole crowd of 5,000 people. It was the impact. He walked, he slept, he did life with them. They traveled together. They went to weddings together. They did everything together. that is more impactful than preaching a 1 hour sermon. You know, that is like, who can you bring into your life? Who can you impact with who can you let live with you? Who can you take with you on errands and just doing life? Let them see you when you're falling, when you have challenges, when you're angry with your husband, and how you get back up, how you repent for what, you know, your argument and how you handled it. Like how do you raise your kids? How do you, that is going to be so impactful for people. And it would just like, that's what we need to start modeling for people.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So you'll have to excuse me. For some reason, my camera just decided to stop working, and this never really happens. So I'm here listening to you, but my camera is having some technical issues. So please bear with me. But I think you basically, just to kind of sum up what you said, you know, your focus is personally what you and your husband and just the community, everything that's being built is being the truth, you know, being the answer. Obviously there's a whole laundry list of things that we could all point out about what things have happened wrong.
Right.
Going on today, but you would rather focus your energies on trying to right the wrongs that have been done, and being an example of what it actually means to be a follower.
What it looks like.
Yeah. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. You guys, if you're on here, please get those likes up, tag anybody, or share this with someone who you think may find this interesting. Also, if you would like to show support to the show, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Sade. So yeah, you've shared a lot there. And I think you, again, hit the nail on the head about being the answer and actually being the hands and feet. I saw somebody in there saying, like, we are the church, the people, not the building,
Mm-hmm.
the people are the church. Totally agree with that. And I think we would be a lot better off if we just started to emulate and started to, you know, put actions to what the message of hope is actually about. Like if people saw it, because that's what you said really made a difference in you. You heard all these things, heard all this rhetoric, you know, went to different maybe Bible studies or conferences or whatever, went to even a Bible college, and you heard it, but the power you had never really experienced the power. You had never actually seen what does it mean to be transformed, or what does it mean to have this power in my life that is literally impacting me in every area of my life. And that's what it's supposed to be about. That's really what it is supposed to be about, is nobody can convince somebody otherwise. I'm less inclined now even to try to convince somebody and say, oh, you need to follow this, you need to do this. It's more of like, I hope my life speaks to something different. And, you know, and then it's up to God to reveal to that person who he is. It's up to the, you know, the higher power to reveal to that person, like, the truth, you know what I mean? But being the truth, you know what I mean? Emulating that, showing that in our actions by who we are, I think is so much more powerful than just judging, being known for judging, you know, just quoting scriptures all the time that don't necessarily mean anything to anybody, especially if they're hurting, you know, especially if they have real issues right then and there that you can solve, that you choose not to. So again, I think those are all very powerful points. Shout out to Deanie for the 5 on this on the super chat. I see. Part of my childhood, I was raised under the tenets of Seventh Day Adventist, and it was a source of church hurt for many years due to how strict it is. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Janelle.
Yeah, because that. Yeah, that actually is one of the questions we talked about, actually, about talking. And I'm so sorry, Deanie, for I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but I understand that. I think, this is where the church has gotten itself into trouble, is that we want to control people's convictions with rules and regulations and rituals and everything the way we think it needs to be, like, just be this way. But the thing is like, God could have created robots if he wanted to, but he didn't. He wants us to the free choice that we have is a gift. He wants us to freely love him and freely choose him. He doesn't want us to be in so much fear. I got to make myself like do all these, and if I don't get it on point, then I'm, you know, I'm cast away from out of heaven. I'm cast away. It's like he wants us to, it's through the relationship and the intimacy of free, as he's freely chosen us, we freely choose him back. We love him, and there's a grace in that process when we don't get it right. But it's like it's not out of see, when I focused on the sin before I got saved, and I was so worried about, don't do this, don't have sex before marriage, don't drink, don't do this, don't do that. It was like you focus on this and you end up stumbling in those, because that's the wrong focus. If you whatever you focus on, that's going to grow into full maturity, and then that's going to take over. So if you focus on the one who is, the one who loves, the one who created you, if you focus on the one who has the answers, the one who wants to have relationship with you, that's when he just starts, your mind automatically starts getting renewed. Your spirit starts getting renewed. You just start, you're not making yourself become this rigid, perfect person. It's like, oh, like, I don't even want to watch a horror film now because I just don't have a desire for it anymore. I just don't want to be afraid. I just don't want to be in fear. Like, it doesn't feel like God in me. I don't feel that peace anymore. So I naturally just start, like, he just peels back the layers, and it's because of the intimacy with him. It's because of like spending time with him, worshiping him, like reading his word, the biography of who he is. And it just starts like building me up. And so I think there's a lot of that. I've had that in my life where there's been very strict church leaders that have expected this and this, but it was almost like they like cut out the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit's the one that's supposed to teach you and comfort you. So it's like, and when I would ask questions and I say, well, why can't I listen to this music, or why can't I do, why can't I wear this, or why can't I do, it was like, just do it because that's what's right. It's like it was almost like, hey, like we already figured it out with the Holy Spirit, so you don't need the Holy Spirit. Just take our word for it. And it's like, no, that's not, God doesn't want robots. He doesn't want that. He wants to teach, and there's a grace in our journey. Like, what one person is going to be convicted on earlier in their journey is not going to be the same that God moves in their heart to be convicted of later on in their journey. And there's grace for the journey, because we're, as we're moving forward, there's grace as we're moving forward, because he's a good God. And if he showed us everything in us that was wrong, like, we'd literally have a heart attack and die. Like, it should be too much. But it's like, it's not about that. It's not about getting it right and being perfect. It's about relationship. It's learning how much he loves us. It's learning this intimacy with him. It's learning that he can walk with us throughout the day, that we can hear his voice, that he can give us wisdom and peace and joy to conquer the situations that come about in our life. It's learning dependence and trust in him. Like, he knows we're going to have fallen parents that aren't going to live up to perfection the way he designed it. He knows. And that's why where he comes and he redeems that. It's purposeful. It was all part of his plan, so.
I always, there's a passage that talks to, it's the goodness of God that leads a person to repentance, right? Or leads a person to want to give their life. And it's like, it's so deeply personal. It's so deeply personal. Somebody's, their walk, their connection, it goes back to God having to reveal himself to that person in a way that is so transformative to them, or so impactful to them, where it's like, you can't deny it. And I think sometimes emphasis on like trying to do certain outward acts, or trying to perform certain things, it kind of overlooks that whole piece of this divine power revealing himself to us in our natural state. You know what I mean? Like, God meeting us where we are at. Because like that has to be real for a person to even recognize, oh my gosh, like, there's more than what I've been seeing. Like, there's a greater power, there's a greater revelation, there's a higher, like, I think that's everything to it. And like I said, it's God, it's the goodness. It's the goodness of that divine power. It's the goodness of God.
That leads to repentance. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the thing that really causes a person to be like, oh my gosh, I've been doing things, I've been living in a way that is far below what I could be doing. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a better way to live. So, and I think that's where sometimes the focus on like, oh my gosh, it really can become confining. And I think that's why sometimes people are just like, I'm done. I don't want anything to do with this, because they associate these things with a whole bunch of different rules, a whole bunch of different, like somebody in the comments said, oh, when I think of Christians, I just think of a bony finger pointing, you know what I mean? The judgment, all that kind of different stuff. And that is literally nothing. That it is nothing about what this message is even about. You made the point of, you know, of Christ being like how we had 12 disciples, right? And he was walking with them and being patient with them. And there were even times when he was preaching a message and he was just like, listen, don't only follow me if you want to. Like, he wasn't trying to get everybody even necessarily to be the follower. He was like, no, only follow me if you really feel that conviction in your heart. So like, that's what I'm saying. It's a very deep personal thing. And I think the more we understand that and embrace it as the individual journey that it is, and then to your point, you do connect with people along the way who are in different aspects in their walk of their understanding of spirituality, their understanding of God. You connect with those like-minded people, and then it's less about rules and regulation, and it really becomes a life of freedom. It really does. And somehow it's funny how something that's supposed to bring freedom has now been associated with rules and bondage and oppression. And for some way, just because that's the way it's been applied, not only religiously, I mean, institutionally, if we know the way it's been applied politically. So we know there's reasons for this. But as far as what it's supposed to be, like, it's funny how something that's meant to bring liberation, that's supposed to bring hope, has been associated with everything opposite. But we know that's not the truth. We know that's not what it's actually about, you know? So again, guys, if you're on here, please get those likes up, tag anybody, or share this with someone who you think may find it interesting. So let's see. Okay, so kind of getting into this whole topic of church hurt. Have your experiences in churches, have they been positive or mostly positive, or did you experience your own church hurts along the way? And if so, what did you learn from that experience, and how did you handle that situation or those situations?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I definitely experienced, I mean, the minute you're going to be in church, you're going to experience church hurt because everybody's fallen. You know, there was a time where, you know, specifically, and I think this is a public thing, so it's okay to talk about, but there was an elder in the church. He was older. He was very respected. He was like a spiritual dad to many people. He did a lot of married people off, did a lot of premarital counseling, met with a lot of people, discipled people, was like kind of one of the main pastors, like right-hand man. And actually Sade and I were at the same church when this happened.
But who you're talking about was my spiritual father at the time. So like, let's just set context here. He was I went to him for spiritual counseling.
Yeah,
I went to him for spiritual counseling. So this is the set.
Yeah. And he was married to an amazing woman of God, like who led like the women's Bible studies, and it was a pretty big church. And just like there was the thing is in this church there was a lot of fruit, a lot of mature people, like people that were even leaders in other churches came here to get trained and equipped. And so it was like a very like it seemed like a very safe place because there was so much order in place and like nothing could get by. Like if anybody was in the wrong, like people would call you out on it. Right. So this was so shocking. So he ended up leaving with one of his spiritual daughters, and went off, left his wife, married her, and called it the sovereignty of God, called it that it was under the sovereignty of God. Which meant that like God was okay with this, and it was in his hands, and it was part of part of his plan. It rocked the church. It rocked me because when things like that happen, and it is so common, but this was a place that I really trusted. And I
that's adultery. Sorry, I'm looking at it.
It makes you feel like everything you thought was real about God, like this, like it was a lie. It makes you feel like it was like that it's like you were living in an illusion and nothing is what it seems.
Yeah.
And so, but you know what God was so like just like so good to me, because like right a month before this came out, I had a dream, and this was before I knew that God, it was early in my journey with God, and I didn't know that he was speaking to me in my dreams at the time, but this was one of the beginning moments. Is I had a dream that there was a man, and it looked like him, that was being inappropriate with women in the church. And I had a dream about this. I cried, and I came to one of my, one of the other leaders, and he was also a prophet. And my husband's spiritual dad, and and I shared with him what happened, because he was sharing with us, he was teaching us how to interpret dreams. And I emailed the whole dream to him, and he never got back to me. And then when it came out, I saw him in the parking lot, and he was like, I said, oh my gosh, I just started bursting into tears. I hugged him. He's like, I couldn't tell you what was going on, but you know what, that dream was really what was happening. Because I said, I trust you guys so much. I don't know if this could be true, but it wasn't just me, but there was like there was like probably 4 or 5 other people that also had dreams. It was many people. So it was like, that's how good God is even like, this is his church, and he will bring things to the open. Like, he is not playing. So if there's people that are hiding things like that, like, he's going to expose it. Like, he's going to make right what is wrong. And so that was his mercy over the situation, is that he gave dreams to all these people in the church, so that it was exposed and then it could be dealt with. And so, but it was very heartbreaking. It was, it just, there's going to be, see, the thing is like, we cannot trust in man. Man will always fail us. I will fail you. My husband will fail you. We will fail, because we're only men, right? But we have to trust the God in somebody. So when you eat the meat and you spit out the bones, that was our favorite saying back then. Just like, okay, yeah, that was God, that wasn't. That was God, that wasn't. So that way you don't take offense, and you don't say, oh, okay, well, God's not real. See, that person just messed up. Like, of course they're gonna mess up. They're human. They're not Jesus. So all I can do is point you to Christ and do the best I can. And, I'm going to be held accountable for all of my actions, for everything. And, but I'm gonna miss it sometimes. And so that's where we have to bridge people to God and make them dependent on God and not to man. We cannot put man between God. We cannot do that. That's you have to know your Father's voice. You have to learn intimacy and build relation with God, because every person will fail you. Every person you trust, every church leader, every brother and sister, at some point it will happen. So isn't that liberating? That's just liberating? Look, we don't need that pressure.
And I will, and I think learning that balance is a part of maturing and walking, and recognizing that humans will absolutely fail. Pastors, leaders. I mean, if I even look at my history in different churches and stuff, like probably a good half of them, different leaders either ran off and had an adultery. Like, I remember the first church I was in, this was when I was like 5th and 6th grade, where I really started wanting to focus on God. And was like, hey, I want to live for him. And it was like, every word the pastor was saying, I was like holding on to. I was like eating it, like this is like the gospel. And then he ended up running off with his wife with like 5 kids with another man from the church. And mind you, he was like one that was preaching heavy against homosexuality. He was like staunch, heavy against it. It ended up being like a big, to the point to where now he's still living in I think he's still with the guy, or he's, openly living a homosexual lifestyle, running like something down in like SoCal. So like he's now completely in another lifestyle. But like at the time when he was in the church, it was super strict. Like, women had to wear doilies on their head, and it was like you could do certain things. But like because I was young, that's all I knew. I still wanted to please God. And so when that happened, it was very, very confusing as a young girl. I was very much like, what was real wasn't real. But I think to a certain extent, that's when I really started to learn the difference between, okay, what does it mean to really, know God for myself and understand God for myself, and start to try to differentiate when maybe God is using a person to do something good, but also understanding that people are still imperfect. So to your point, spitting out the bones, saying like, hey, maybe this person is in my life for this, or vice versa. We're encouraging each other, but I'm never putting my trust in God in that person. I'm never saying, okay, if you don't fail, then I trust in God. If you do fail, then like then then it's like all is gone. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
I have
Yeah.
to know for myself that this perfect being like never changes. People change, people who claim him change and do evil things in his name, but that has nothing to do with this revelation, this power, this loving God. It
Mm-hmm.
has nothing to do with him. We're all broken vessels, broken people that are trying our best to get to that point. So I think that was the
Right.
first time I started to recognize, okay, God is still real and people are still human. And even if they're trying to be good or not be good, like they're going to mess up. So not to put too much clout, even on leaders, not to say you don't respect them, but at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
like if a leader falls or does something, because they're going to be held to a higher standard to a certain, they're going to be held to a higher standard. So
Mm-hmm.
off, not to be like, oh my gosh, God isn't real. It's just like, no, that person was human. They had an error, something happened, but I still need, that doesn't give me a reason to just walk away from this, what's been revealed to me, And I think that's
Okay.
a really important message.
And let me say that we as a people, we are the ones that are putting these leaders on these pedestals. We are putting
Fair.
them, they are just like us, right? So then all of a sudden they feel like they can't be honest with their brokenness and what their struggle is. And 50% of pastors struggle with pornography. And they feel like they have no one to turn to because then the congregation is just going to judge them and just not. And then they isolate and then internalize and don't tell anybody. And then this thing gets worse and worse and worse. And
And
all of a
worse,
sudden,
and worse,
yeah,
and worse.
there's child pornography happen or child, whatever, molestation happen because something that's a sin that's in darkness and secret ends up maturing into something a lot darker. So we need to create safe places for these leaders to be honest. I mean, my husband preaches from his brokenness. He'd be like, man, I messed up, guys, today. I was yelling. I just like got angry at my wife and I was trying to hold my temper in, and I just felt very prideful. And, so he'll confess those things. We're very quick to there's a safe place between me and my husband. So if he's, if there's something that we need to confess to each other, we do it right away because we don't want anything in the darkness to be stay in the darkness, because that's where the enemy will just keep it. And, keep your mind going. All of a sudden, you're just off in Lululand. So it's you just squash it right then and there. Hey, look, this is what happened.
And that's how. And to your point, that's how. That's how sin or certain struggles. That's how they can fester. Is because you hold it and then it becomes a place of shame. And something about shame has a way of growing and taking on a life of its own. So I think to your point, creating a safe space of being I think people shouldn't, it should be clear that just because you are, you've devoted your life to God, you said, what, I want to surrender myself to this power, this being that is greater than me, doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that it's all of a sudden you're going to be blameless. If anything, it is a very imperfect walk. And so I say this all the time when I'm what, I'm a Christ follower and this is something that I am growing in every single day, but I don't have it all right. I may look back a year from now and be like, dang, I missed it there, or dang, I did this, but this is an organic growing relationship I'm having with truth, where it's I'm being transformed. The goal is to be transformed every single day. It's not perfection. It's progress, and I think if you set the record straight where it's you don't for example, I was having a conversation with my friend yesterday and she said she used to try to take her mom to church all the time. And her mom would be one that was she was smoking cigarettes, different stuff. And then as soon as she would hit the church door, she would throw out the cigarette and then go in. And then she would do her hymnal, whatever. And then she would leave and start smoking and doing things again. And I'm just that's totally fake. I was if it was me, she should have continued smoking she should have went in the church, continued smoking, doing whatever, not out of disrespect, but it's you got to be honest. If we're just going to meetings and just putting on a facade, well, then who has time for that? Nobody has time for that. No wonder people, don't change, or hurt starts happening, or weirdness starts happening. It's because that's not honest. You have to have an honest conversation. God is a God of truth. And if there's no truth in what's even being said and the interaction, then nothing is ever going to change,
Yeah.
So there has to be that foundation, I think, of honesty and truth, and not not feeling like, oh, just because I claim this now I have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. If anything, it's like, by the grace of God, I'm here. But don't focus on me, focus on God, because I'm gonna mess up,
This is why I don't like when Sade jokes around and calls me First Lady. Anybody that calls me that, because I liked it when I was not known for being a pastor's wife or any, like, I mean, our church is our community is very small still, but it's like, because the minute you say, oh, it's pastor's wife, then it's like, you're like, all of a sudden there's a target on your back. What? No. It's like, can I just, we told my husband used to have a joke that, just call us John Doe Ministries. Like, I'm Christian John Doe. Nobody got to know my name, like, just do God's work and boom, that's it. Like, we don't need to be put on a pedestal. No, but yeah, I mean, we're accountable though. Like, it's important. That's part of the Christian walk, is like, we got to hold each other accountable. We got to be accountable. We're accountable to the people we're doing life with, the people that we're pouring into. Like, hey, if you see something off with me, if you see something, call me out on it. Talk to me about it. Because like that means you love me. If you hide it from me, you just gossip behind my back, then that is not love. But I would hope that you would love me enough to say, hey, like that, like, you might want to bring it to the Lord, on that. But anyway, somebody said right before that there's wolves in sheep's clothing, and yes, and those we are called to call out. Those ones we are called to, like, to do. But sometimes we'll get, if somebody's off in a doctrine, or somebody has a different opinion about a doctrine, we'll just completely write them off. Like, it's cancel culture is so big right now. And so we got to be careful with just throwing that word around. Like, that's a wolf, that's a false prophet. That's that. We really got to know that the Lord, the Holy Spirit, has revealed that to us. And it's been confirmed, not just by you, but like there's multiple people that also have authority that have the same confirmation. And that's when, that's God, and God is exposing it. So.
Yeah, no, I hear you. No, I hear you. And I think that's why, at least for me, I think it's there's so much how do I put it? Like, when it comes to just trying to be the right thing, and whether it's strive for holiness, strive to be better, whatever, or work towards that, like, that in of itself is like a full-time job. Like, you don't even really have the luxury or the time to be looking around, figuring out who's got it right, who doesn't have it right. You know what I mean? Who is following the way versus who isn't. It's like, no, because it's a full-time job making sure that you're okay. You know what I mean? That you're not getting too off in the right or left field.
Right.
So I think that's more of a, I don't want to say more of a rarity, but like, the emphasis should be really you focusing on yourself and your relationship with God, not trying to police everybody else and make sure that they all got it together. It's like,
right.
So yeah, so no, absolutely. Again, guys, if you're on here, get those likes up. So I want to keep this conversation moving. So yeah, you hit in some really, I think, good aspects about church hurt and different ways to navigate it, and recognizing that people are people, and people, even those who claim to be the prophet, bishop, pastor, leader, holy man, holy woman, they still have the propensity to sin. So don't base your salvation off of or your belief off of a person, because that will fail you 100% of the time. Just know that people are people, but that doesn't change who God is. Now, would you say I kind of want to switch directions a little bit on this, because this is something that I feel like women in particular struggle with this, inside the church, outside of the church, just this whole idea. So first things first, in your opinion, do you think the Bible is oppressive to women? Why or why not?
No, because you say church or the Bible? Is the Bible oppressive to women?
Is the Bible in particular, is that oppressive to women? Why?
No, because there were women leaders all throughout the Bible. There was a prophetess. Deborah was the judge. Priscilla and Aquila were in house church leaders, and also leaders of a company. They had Mary Magdalene, and there was another Mary in the Bible. They all had specific jobs, very important tasks, and to deliver certain letters or answer questions, but about theology or God. And so these women were placed in positions of major influence and leadership roles. So no, I would say no, because we just have to look. We can't look further than the word to see that.
Okay. Okay. Um, okay. So on to the next question. Why do you think women in the church have the reputation of being the most promiscuous?
Yeah, I was talking to my husband about this one. And I was like, should I answer that one? And I think just going back to that thing of like, I mean, I know you probably hear MK kids. There used to be like PKs and MKs that are
PKs,
missionary
yeah,
pastors
PKs.
kids. Yeah, and you would hear a lot about that, like that they would be, promiscuous, and I think it's just like if anybody feels so controlled by something, their instinct is going to be to rebel. Their instinct is going to be their pride is going to go up, and they're just going to rebel. And when anybody is controlled and constrained so much, it's just that's not a natural. Like God is not, he's not a controlling God. Like that's not his nature. So it's going to have the opposite effect. So I think like people are just, they feel like they've had to be, like they have to, align themselves with this perfect image that it ends up, having the opposite effect because they're not living from their true authentic selves and being, having just going through their journey and like freely choosing God, freely growing in God. Like maybe those women don't really have a relationship with God. It could be so, but their parents say they do, and their parents have labeled them as a Christian, like that is what I need to, this is the image of our family, but maybe that's not where they're at spiritually. And so we can definitely stifle like the move of God and in people's lives, and them just kind of innately just feeling like they want to rebel. Yeah, I don't know too much more. I don't know, what would you add to that, Sade?
Well, I think part of this goes back to creating a space, and this is what I love. This is what I love about Saints and Soldiers, and why I miss you guys so much that you guys are no longer here with me. But at least having a place where people there's a level of honesty. And I think sometimes there's certain situations where people get, that's why like I saw the comment before where the person was saying, oh, smoking is not a sin, it's unhealthy but not a sin. And I was using that example to say that there's certain people, organizations, churches, whatever, where it's like there's this sense where, okay, as soon as I come here I have to put on, as soon as I come here I have to kind of maintain this certain image. And the problem with that is if you're so busy maintaining a certain image, then you're never really able to deal with real life. That's the thing. The thing about the gospel that is supposed to be transformative is that it's supposed to impact our real day-to-day life. So what does that mean for maybe young women or men who are coming of age? They're starting to experience hormones. They have a sex drive. They're starting to, have these different things, have these different sensations, all these different things that in a healthy community could be addressed and could be guided the right way. But I think if you're in a position or in a place where it's like, oh, I have to maintain this, and it's just like, just don't have sex until marriage, or just don't do this, and it's all the things that you're supposed to do, but you're never taught why, and you're never really taken those deeper natural human desires are not addressed, it can create all this imbalance. And so I think some reason women, and I see Deanie, he's like, look, even some men, look at Nick Cannon, LOL. So you said some women and men, I think even they have this reputation just because sometimes there's just not a freedom or this place where people can be open and talk about the fact that we're just like, yeah, just because I'm this or I'm a believer or whatever doesn't mean that my sex drive doesn't go away, or doesn't mean I don't have these feelings. Like, this is a real thing. How do I deal with that? And unfortunately, that is just not always something that some churches, some places feel comfortable addressing. And I think that is why, as a result, you have this behavior, because it's not getting to the core of what people are experiencing and what people are dealing with on a day-to-day. We live in a very, very hypersexualized culture. So if people aren't being taught about, sex drive, healthy sexuality, if they're not being taught how to handle just our natural fleshly desires, if they're not being taught that as kids, as they're coming of age, they're going to turn to the next thing that they see, which is the stuff on the television. They're going to turn to all that. And that's going to be their teachers. And I think that's what ends up happening.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Shout out to Deanie with the 5 on the super chat. I see the messages communicated in many ways. There's prosperity gospel, Jay Osteen, spiritual warfare, Rebecca Brown, charismatic, find what works. All right. So again, thanks for the Cash App and for the love. I always appreciate it when you're here, Deanie.
You got some faithful followers.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I see Deanie PKs were basically raised on lockdown, so that's probably why they get and that goes back to what you were saying earlier. Sometimes we feel so controlled and so restricted. It's almost natural, for you. It's like a natural instinct for you to want to like, it's kind of like if you've ever been on like a strict diet, and then
that's a good analogy.
And then your body's like, yes, like let me make up for the last month, or I was only eating,
Right. Yeah, I know what that's like with my sugar. So yeah.
Right. Also, special shout out to Hakeem for the $7.50 on the Cash App. I always appreciate you. He's the sponsor of the week. He is a super supporter. He is he's just a great person to have, whether he's here like tuning in or not tuning in. He's always doing his best to show support. So again, I thank you. Okay, so because I want to be mindful of time. So I'm gonna see if we can power through these next questions. How are you doing on time? I know I said we would try to keep this.
I'm good because my kids are not here, so
okay. So you're like, okay, you're gonna try to milk this cow as long as you can. Let me try to pull those questions up. They're hiding from me. Okay, where'd you go? Sorry about that. I have too many things open. Okay, so so I think you hit upon some great things. And again, I want you to know this is not necessarily about having a right or wrong answer. This is really about you just sharing what you believe, what God has shown you over your walk. And so again, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. Just putting it out there. People can take it or leave it. Some people, I'm sure it's resonating with them. Some people are just like, I don't know what in the heck you're talking about, and that's okay. But either way, I think it's good. I love having these kinds of conversations, especially with I've known you for years. I know your purity of heart and your desire to really be about what you claim to be. And it's not a perfect journey, and I think that's also what's beautiful about it, because it's like it can take the pressure off of being like, you know what. I'm again progress over perfection. I'm really working towards this thing.
Yeah.
So let me see the next question. Okay. So what are your thoughts on submission and the role women and wives, or and the role of women and wives according to the Bible? Just FYI, I don't know if you're as familiar with this, but this whole topic of submission is always it is a tense topic of discussion. One that, at the very least online, women are generally against. So I just want to hear your whole perspective on submission in relates to marriage and just the role of women in being a wife as someone who is a believer.
Okay. Yes. I know this is a controversial one, especially we live in a society where it's like becoming more, because women have been suppressed in the past. And so there's been this whole drive to change the culture in a big way. But anyway, I will say this, that when there's two cooks, have you ever heard the slogan, like, you can never have two cooks in the kitchen?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay. So it's kind of like that. If there's two bosses and a corporation and you're always going to, because one has a different perspective than the other one, you're always going to kind of bump heads, and that it's going to be difficult. Right. So it's not that women are not of value, not as important or anything. It's just that men and women were created with different attributes. If you guys have ever heard the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? It's a psychological doctor that has shown that there are differences between men and women. There are, and it's purposeful. And both represent a beautiful aspect of God. We were made in God's image. Yeah. And so when it's put together, it's very profound. But it's like, so the way I look at it, so my husband is I've noticed, and it's not just with him, but with lots of other men too. It's like they're more like the visionary, like they see the big picture. Yes. And then the women are more like the practical detail, or not that men aren't detail oriented, but a lot of women are usually the detail oriented practical one. And I'm like I'm like immersed in like the details of running my household with my kids and everything. And men can be that way too. I'm not saying that, but but my husband will come home. It's like, I can't, like, I'm thinking about the next, well, I got to go to the grocery, I got to do this, I got to call this person. And I'm thinking, but I don't know really what the big 6 months from now, 1 year, 2 year, I don't like have the vision of what's really, my husband does. So he'll be like, come home and, oh my gosh, look at this move that happened. Like, this is about to happen. This is about to happen. And like, it just gives me so much peace that he's on that forefront. He's the visionary for our family and our household, and he can see the horizon, he can see what direction we're moving in. And then I'm his helpmate, where I'm doing maybe the more practical side of it, the more detail oriented side of it. But we're both a team pushing it together. And so he values my opinion. Like, I might get discernment about something, or I might have like an insight about something that he doesn't see. And I'll share with him, and he weighs it, and it helps him. It says, you hear about, like, there's also a saying that says, behind every great president was a great woman. So there's a lot of importance in like in communicating these things, like, both equally, right? But if there is a if there is like a decision to make, and like we can't make a decision, like somebody needs to like move forward with in one direction. But so we've weighed we've weighed our opinions and our insights. He's going to be my husband. I submit to him whatever his final say is, whatever he thinks, because I know that God's given him that type of understanding and perception, and that's how he's designed the family unit to work harmoniously. Like, I trust, even if he gets it, he might get it off, but God's going to honor me and still submitting to, like, at least there's one cook in the kitchen, and it's not two cooks battling in this disharmony and dissension. It's like, okay, well, even if you had us in a wrong direction, at least we're all going together in one direction, whether bad or good. but he's still validating me. He's still listening and values the things that I have to say, the insight. I'm praying for him every day as he goes back out into the marketplace or whatever he's doing. Like, I'm his backbone, And so I think if you look at it from that perspective, it's not like you see like, okay, that makes sense, because it is like the man and the woman do work in a harmonious way together. And when that's in order, the children have a stable place to thrive. And there's not like battling of opinions and dissension. Well, we should do this or we should do that. It's very conflicting to the children that are under that, right? It's when we have, it's just like a company or a corporation. If you have multiple bosses at the top level, like, the company wouldn't go anywhere. But at some end of the day, everybody has a part to play. But at some end of the day, somebody has to make the final decision. And so I believe that that's what the word says, is that the husband is going to be the final decision maker in the process. Oh, you are muted.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is, I always say it's not a good stream if there's not a little bit of struggle. And I think I have certainly fulfilled up to that struggle piece, to my camera going out, my mic going out. So thank you for bearing with me. But like I said, no, I think you hit on some really, really, really great points. And this is, actually, I did a live a few days ago where I was looking at it, or what was it? What topic is masculinity harmful for women? Right. And oftentimes what I've heard, anytime I hear women in particular who are very, very, very against the idea of submission, there's usually an element of fear behind it. And there's this assumption,
yes,
a man, if I am to submit, or if I am to cooperate with a man, I by default am going to be abused. I by default am going to be taken advantage of. And so that's why I'm saying, it is important as a woman, first of all, like, I'm not saying you're supposed to just submit to any old random man. I'm not saying you go and marry a bum off the street and then,
right.
Of course you want to be mindful, but it's like, especially you come together with a man under God, there is just a level of authority. And I will say, even if I look on just strictly, let's say I just look at YouTube and I look at the channels that are ran by men and the channels that are run by women and the conversations that they have. And even the conversations I'm having with men versus women, we talk about different things. Let's just be honest. Women, we love talking about relationships generally, what's happening in our day-to-day life, how are we feeling, what's going on. You hear men, they're talking about politics, they're talking about the way the world is working, they're talking about jobs, they're talking about the economy, they're talking about the way things are made, because I think God made us like that. Generally, men are the ones who built society. Not to say women were not in places helping, but it's like, to your point, we are made differently. And I think when we understand that and respect that as women and know that there are aspects that God put in men that are beautiful and should be honored and respected, just like in women, then it doesn't have to be a competition. But I think for some reason, there are some of us, and I think this could be maybe a mixture of feminism. This could be a mixture of just the different things that propaganda we've heard on media and mainstream television or whatever. But it kind of pushes this idea of a gender role of like, oh, I can do everything a man can do, or I have to do everything a man can do. And it's like, no, it's okay to recognize that we as women do have certain limitations, and that can be sometimes for our safety and that can be for our benefit. It doesn't necessarily have to be for we're being oppressed or we're being silenced. It's like, no, God just made us different. And I think when we embrace that and recognize our place and recognize really where we do thrive and where we are strong, then it can become easier to work with our husbands or work with those people and recognize, hey, maybe he is seeing something differently. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's okay. We don't have to always see things the same way. And I think it becomes more of a balancing act, and it becomes more harmonious when you're not having to compete, when you're not feeling like you have to have the final say, because deep down inside, you're simply afraid. You're afraid of working with a man who you see is very imperfect. You know what I mean? And so, I think you hit the nail on the head there of just being like, at the core, men and women both represent unique aspects of God. And instead of us fighting against that, and we embrace it, it's a beautiful harmony, you know? So, good stuff there. Again, guys, if you're on here, get those likes up, tag anybody, share this with someone who you think might find it interesting. I see GB in there dropping some scriptures.
First Corinthians. Thank you for the scripture, G. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, because we gotta. The husband has a more a heavier burden because he has to submit to Christ. So he's going to be held accountable for leading us, the women, off the stray. He will be held accountable for that. So, that's really good. That's a good. Thank you for putting that scripture out.
That's another thing too. I think there's a good thing that you put the nail on the head on. People, I think in general, who are so adamant about trying to be in control, or if I, talk to women who are so adamant about trying to be in control or trying to lead or be the head, we forget that there is a higher level of responsibility and burden for leaders, whether it's being a leader in the church, whatever, like there's a higher burden. So it's like, I think sometimes, because sometimes when we can look on TV or we can look at different ways that they portray leaders, and you'd be like, oh, wow, like they have this nice house or this nice car, all those accolades. And we can see that aspect of it. But we forget, especially if you're really a leader under God, it's like how that's really about you being a servant. And that's really about you laying your life down. And it's like, that's hard. So when you really understand, I think even the burden that the man carries within the context of marriage, it's like, do you really want to take that on? Do you really want to have the burden of having to lay your life down the way that God gives that burden to man? Do you really want that? Or do you just want to be like, okay, I need to make sure I respect. I need to make sure I honor, you know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, so good.
Okay. We're wrapping it up. We're getting close.
We're getting through all the questions.
Yeah. So I touched upon this already, but if you have anything else you would like to add, feel free to let me know. But why, in your opinion, do you think so many women fear authority and men? Like, why do you think that's there?
I think that we live in a broken world, and where we have been a lot, if we come from a broken family, sometimes that is because of some brokenness from our father, who, also, is a fallen person. It's probably male figures that might have hurt us in the past. And so obviously that's going to be very, like, until God redeems that. And, sometimes he might redeem that through another male that is submitted to God, like another father figure that can show you what it really looks like. But if that is our history and all we know, of course we're going to be afraid, to submit to, leaders in the church, a man in the church, where that trust is broken, and only God can heal that.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So you're saying people, and this could go for men too. There's plenty of men out there who are just like, they don't, they have a hard time respecting women. They have a hard time trusting women because they've been maybe abused. Maybe they had a bad relationship with their mom, or they were married at one time and that person cheated on them. So it's like, this really goes both ways, where our experiences, if they're informed by trauma, we've had traumatic situations with families, people who are closest to us, especially if it's happened multiple times. Like, it's one thing if maybe you had, I don't know, negative interactions with your brother growing up, but you had a loving father, or like if you're one that you kind of had reinforcement, then it could be easier for you to be like, okay, well, that's just that person. That's not everybody. But if you had bad relations with your dad and your brothers, and then your first couple of boyfriends cheated on you, and then your teacher did this, and it just seems like it's, over and over and over again, you can get to the point where it's just like, all men are like this, or all women are like that. So,
just because we haven't experienced doesn't mean that's the reality. Like, we're so limited by our experiences. We only see through this dimension, but there's so many dimensions to life. If you've ever heard of people saying, like, when you're in college, like, get out, like, before you get married and settle down, like, go travel the world, go experience, so you can broaden your perspective and your understanding and your worldview. And so a lot of us will base reality off of our experience, but there's so much more to life that we haven't. It's not possible to understand it all, and grasp it all. And just know that just because we've experienced something doesn't mean that is a absolute truth.
Right. Or that there's not other things that you could also experience. Yeah. No, I totally understand that, because we are so limited. Sometimes, even if I think of just like something as simple of, me living in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, like, this is a complete bubble. This is like a bubble of bubbles. So if I stayed here my entire life and I was just like, based all of the world or all the nation based upon how people treat me here or how I interact with people here, like, that would be so skewed. That'd be so skewed. And yet sometimes I think we can do that unknowingly, but we can kind of do that. And so that's why I think it's always good to try to stay open and humble and teachable. So that way you don't limit yourself. You don't kind of cut your hand off from maybe something that could end up being a blessing, or could being like a really great situation, because you're so in fear of something that happened there, So, good stuff. So, okay, I think we are down to the last question here. So, okay, so as a pastor's wife and mother of 4, what are practical ways you teach and encourage women to grow in their spirituality?
I take a very hands-off approach. I only want to do what the Spirit is leading me to do, not what I want to do, not what I think is right, not how fast I want them to understand something, because that's not going to be fruitful. It's God does the work in each and every one of us, and I can't manipulate or control that in somebody's life. All I can do is partner with God and be sensitive to Him leading me to say certain things, or He stands outside of time and He knows when we're going to finally give Him our yes. And so I really am just very cautious and just only do what God wants me to do, nothing more, nothing less. Don't say anything more, don't say anything less. It's not about me, it's about God. It's about what God's doing in that person's life. It's about them. And so I think that's super, super important. And so if they reach out to me and ask a question, and I feel sometimes God might say, no, you got to let them work this out. Like, you can't be their crutch. Or sometimes he's like, okay, now I want you to tell them this, or I want you to pray for them, or I want you to just like go over to their house and just love on them, or whatever it is. And so it's just going to look different. And I just, yeah, all I can say is I just let the Holy Spirit lead me. So that's super important, because he's a living God. He's not a controlling God. He's not a boxed in religious God. He is a living, tangible God, and he cares about the details of our life. And he knows exactly how to speak to each and every one of us, because we're all so unique. And so, yeah. And yeah, I guess that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, so you really try to, going back to what I think a good thing to take away from this is nothing else, is recognizing like the way that you and I are talking and the way that you are having this connection. It's like, that is the kind of connection that God desires that we have with him, right? Where it's very real. It's very real. Like, it's something that is moving, it's living, it's organic. You know what I mean? It's not dead. It's not like, yeah. And so a part of that, of growing in that journey is recognizing that it's not, things aren't always stagnant. It's like, there may be something that today, this is the answer. This is what works for that person. But now you're dealing with another person and it may be a different answer. I mean, of course, there are core foundational truths that never change, right? But as far as how we interact with people and the way that we interact with God, like those experiences, they're growing. So that's why I think it's really, anytime we approach, whether it's God or a religious idea or a principle, like if we approach it as a formula, if I always do these particular things, that I'm always going to get this result, it just doesn't work like that. That's why even when we look throughout the biblical narrative and we see the Messiah talking to different people and healing different people, he did it a different way. He was, essentially speaking the truth and he was preaching the message, but it's like the way he interacted with people is so different. And I think that is a message for all of us too, where it's like, whether you're you feel like, hey, I want to connect with this person. I really feel like I want to build a relationship with this person or whatever. It's not going to always be the same way. It's different. It's organic. It has to be natural, because that's actually how life is,
Yeah.
It's not always so stagnant. So thank you, Deanie. Again, thank you, Deanie, for being here. It's always a pleasure. You're always such a great supporter. He's one of my YouTube members. Also, I want to give a special shout out. I don't know if he's still here, but I saw that I just got a new channel member, Carl for President Anthony. Shout out to Carl for President Anthony for becoming a new member. I truly appreciate you guys. I appreciate all of you who've been here hanging out, listening to us, whether you understand or don't understand, agree or don't agree. I hope you took something away from this today. You shared a lot of great things. So
I'm happy that people enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't know what our crowd is, and
oh well, that's the offline conversation. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. We went through a lot. I don't know if there's anything else that you would maybe want to touch upon, add, address, clarify.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to give it out to like people that are watching. If you guys have any specific questions that you want us to address, like put it in the chat bar. If there's anything else that you could possibly think of that just went on your heart and you never just had the opportunity, I'll take the bullets. I'll take it.
You take the bullets.
I'll take the bullets if you
the first one will take the body. Y'all better be kind. I think everybody in the chat has been pretty chill. I don't see any trolls. So
for now.
No, I get trolls. I have a few hate watchers for whatever reason. So that's what they call them. No, I see no law brings chaos, unjust laws, fake laws bring tyranny, God's laws are just.
That's good.
GB here with the structure, with the scriptures and everything. Oh, he also mentioned 1 Timothy 3. Yeah, I think that's where it talks about the overseer, or just what qualifies a pastor or bishop, et cetera, et cetera. So you guys, if you do have any specific questions, we can wait around for a few more moments. But like I said, everyone in here has been pretty chill. I'm sure we'll have a few people on the replay. In the meantime,
I'll say one more thing.
Yeah, totally.
I was just gonna say, because I think he did want me to share. I heard, or one of the comments earlier. Sorry, hold on.
All good. All good. Look, you see what's happened with my camera this whole time. So.
Yeah. Somebody had said earlier about like we are the church, the body is the church, not the building, and it's so true. And I think it's kind of funny because we never like wanted to meet in a building. We didn't know what, when we sold our dream home and our company and we moved to Texas, not knowing what God wanted us to do here. We had just been pastoring a house church for 6 years. So when we got here, like we were like, I don't want to do a Sunday service. We were like, I don't want to do a building. But God's like, no, you're going to bridge a gap. You're going to meet, you're going to start gathering on Sunday. You're going to bridge a gap. And we didn't know anybody here. And we just started meeting. And everybody, so it was interesting because there was a season where we met in a building that we rented the space, and it was pretty cool. It was a co-working station, had these bleachers with really colorful pillows, and it was really fun. It had its own little coffee shop kitchen area. So anyway, but we try to make it, I just didn't want it to feel stuffy. I wanted it to be like our house. Like it felt like our house when we would invite people over. So we've always done a potluck afterwards and just like break bread with us. Like, let's go deeper together. It was kind of a bridge to bring people into more intimate relationship in the Bible Belt that are not used to that. They're used to the stuffy, like, let's just do this.
Yeah.
Let's just pretend we got it going on with God and like not really open ourselves up and go deeper.
Yeah.
And so then COVID happened, they lost the building, or the owner, they ended up selling it. And so
I didn't know that. I'm hecka late.
Yeah. Well, they didn't lose it, but they had to sell it. So,
you're talking about the first building. Okay.
Yeah, the first one. Yeah. So then we were kind of like we're like a homeless church. We were on the news a little bit, but we're like, look, we're not a building. We're like, maybe we'll meet in the park. Maybe we'll meet over here. Like, we'll just whatever. And we've always been a moving nucleus. We were over in some like other, like a business conference area for like a month, and they were like, this isn't working. So then there's a huge like Baptist church in town, which is really interesting because like we're not Baptist, we're non-denominational, but they were like so loving and hospitable, and they're like, we were given this building for free, so we want to generously give it to you too to use. And so we ended up staying there for like a year. But then God was like, okay, now break out now like, and every week it would be something different where like, okay, my husband's like, no, we're not meeting for a while corporately. We're just breaking out into house churches. So we have like 3 house churches going on right now. And it's working against this religious programming in us to like, but we're supposed to go every Sunday and have an hour and a half message and a worship and blah, blah, blah. But if my husband feels like there's a religious spirit, like, or feeling like we're just kind of putting on if he feels anything like that, it's stop. He'll it's very awkward. Stop. Everybody stop. Like, everybody's lying to themselves right now. We're not really worshiping. Like, I need to, it's so funny. So it's like, it's really been working everybody out in the community to be like we're deprogramming right now. And like, what does it really mean to walk out with God and love our brethren, preach the gospel, see God transform people's lives. And it looks different every single week, so now we kind of just meet 3 house churches a week, and then once a month we might meet corporately now. But it's like, I love that. It's just like, and we might move location sometimes 3 hours before. He's like, oh, the Holy Spirit's telling us to go meet at this other location today. And so it just really speaks to that notion that we are the church. The people are the church, not the building. It's not confined to a box. And it's like, this is where we're really working out our walk with each other. And it's very real and it's very practical and it's awesome. So anyways, I just want to share with that. It's just it's kind of, we call it going back to the ancient way, because that's how Jesus was with his disciples. He didn't have a big church, the synagogues were like, that's where the religious people went that didn't really know God. So quite interesting. He was outside the 4 walls. Most of his ministry was outside the 4 walls. So anyways, I just want to leave it with that, get you guys thinking, and to not be so quick to write off God because of your church hurt experiences, but go to God yourself. Talk to him as if you were talking to me or talking to your friend. Talk to him and say, this is where I'm at. And I know you see me from the inside out. And bring your questions to him. Invite him into your process. Invite him into your journey and see what happens.
Yeah, I see. No, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I see. I had a question about prosperity gospel and neo-Pentecostalism, but that might be too heavy. Okay. Um, I might. Well, I'm going to follow this up because I posted something, and that's going to take that in a different conversation. So
I think that could be a message in itself, or like another
yeah.
show in it.
And this is going to be another one, but I know I had posted maybe it was a week or two ago about just the image of the image of the white Jesus, right? And what that's meant, and how some people have been negatively impacted on that. And I just posted a question about it and got a lot of feedback. So I am going to be touching upon that because I know that's for many people, at least many followers, that's kind of been a big issue with them, is not even necessarily what it's about, but the way the gospel has been misrepresented, especially to the Black community, especially the people of colors, and what that really means. So I think, Dini, that is a great question, and that might be something good to bring up in that discussion.
Bring my husband on for that one.
For that one, okay. Yeah, I have. Okay. Yeah, maybe I can send you because I posted this I think like a week or two ago, and I got all kinds of comments in there. So I like to have these questions because it gives me a sense of where people are at, and kind of gives me a sense of what are people dealing with, what's going on, and that can kind of inform the kind of topics that I want to have. So yeah, if he's around, he's always welcome on. I just know I never know what his schedule is.
He would love to talk about that. He would love
about the image of white Jesus.
No. Just what Dini's question is about
the neo-Pentecostalism. Okay.
Neo-Pentecostalism. I don't quite know what neo-Pentecostalism is, but maybe you can share a little bit more.
So the prosperity gospel and neo-Pentecost. Okay, maybe I can send it to him and see if he understands what that means. So
I know we know what the prosperity gospel is. It's just the neo-Pentecostalism. That part.
Yeah, I look forward to that stream as well. So yeah, I did have a person in there I had to block who was being disrespectful. I do see so this stream is for people who think that who haven't realized that the whole Jesus story is a fabrication. Okay. So like I said, not everyone, and that's what I'm saying. I get it. Like I know there's some people who would look at this and they're just like, y'all are crazy. This is obviously a fairy tale or whatever. And it's like, I'm not even mad at that person, because at the end of the day, it talks about how unless God becomes real to you, unless he revealed himself to you, it's like it just sounds like another story. So that's why I'm less inclined now to just try to be like, oh, you have to believe, you have to do that. It's just like,
right.
Listen, this is the truth that has been revealed to me. If I was to try to say this is a fabrication, I would essentially have to deny all these different times God has revealed himself to me in a way that is undeniable. I would have to deny that, and I'm not going to be a liar. But if they haven't had that, they just have it, and it's like,
right.
My hope, my prayer is that if nothing else, this can maybe get you thinking. It can be a seat, whatever, and by God's grace, I try to live out the truth. I try to live out what I believe to be walking in the truth and walking in that message, and then hopefully my life can, if nothing else, be an encouragement for someone else to find God for themselves. Like I said, this isn't about being perfect, but it's about you have to respond to the call. That's it. Yeah. And if you feel like you haven't been called or whatever, it's like, everybody's on a different path in their journey. So that's why I don't even have a vitriolic reaction or mad at someone who's just like, I think this is a fairy tale. It's like, okay, well, you're welcome to listen in, and it's whatever. Now, if you're disrespectful, then I'm gonna have to block you, which I've already done, and I will continue to do. Don't be disrespectful. But apart from that, you guys are always welcome. Rainbow. Yeah, I see the what. Yeah, that's what I saw. No, I hear you. So yeah, some of the stuff we've seen has been fairy tales, but I think this has been a good conversation. I probably will have a part 2, and I'm definitely going to continue these topics. I think as it relates to just spirituality, church, whatever, because I think it's important. So I'm so glad that you were here and just sharing your experience with us, and just sharing how you even decided to walk this journey. I appreciate you for being honest. Like I said, you're always welcome on anytime. Also, if people want to learn more about you guys or your ministry, is there a way that they can get in contact or hear your messages, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, we're starting to get some of our messages are on YouTube. It's Saints and Soldiers. Our website is saintsandsoldiers.org.
Uh-huh.
And you can contact us through the website. And we also have a Facebook page, so you can message us there as well. Saints and Soldiers, and we are in Tyler, Texas.
Okay, so you guys are on the, okay, so I'll go back and add, I didn't know you guys were on YouTube now. Are you guys streaming there like once
Yeah,
a week?
no, I mean, we don't stream, but I'll just upload some of the Facebook lives and I'll put
Okay.
them on there.
Okay, and you guys are you guys still doing the Facebook lives? I haven't seen anything in a bit, but I could be behind.
Yeah, we were yeah, where you been? We were there on Sunday.
Really? Well, maybe I'm not getting these notifications.
Oh, well, I mean, I didn't share it on my main page. It was just on the Saints and Soldiers page. So
well, that's why.
Yeah.
I need to be getting these notifications.
You gotta hit follow.
I feel like I'm followed and hit all notifications. But honestly, truth be told, I'm not as active on Facebook. So maybe that's partially my fault. So sorry, y'all, TMI. So it's just instead of the character. No, that's facts. So that's, like I said, that's a whole another topic of discussion there. But I think this has been good for now, you guys. I will make sure to if you guys want to learn more about the ministry, just learn more about what they're doing, what they're about, I will be sure to leave information in the description box. So please check it out there. Again, guys, thanks for hanging out. Stay tuned for upcoming lives and related topics and just other interesting topics in general. And again, I appreciate you for being here and for hanging out.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I'll be able to meet my husband soon on the next one.
Yeah. I'll bug him. See if we can get some time in the calendar. Maybe I could invite. I know I have. Well, I have an interest. I have a large, interesting mix of people who follow me. So yeah, we'll talk about that because like I said, it's always fun to hear. It's always fun to talk to some of these people, here where they're coming from. So, all right. So, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else you want to add? Or you think?
No, but I'm gonna call you after we end.
Okay. All right. So thank you. And you guys definitely check them out. So yeah, I'll put you backstage and I'll talk to you after the live.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Bye. So again, I appreciate all of you guys hanging out, being here. Like I said, some of you guys, maybe this made sense. Some of you guys, it didn't, but that's fine. You guys are all welcome to hear. I see, quite a few interesting comments. Like I said, I probably will follow this up with another discussion. It'll be cool to bring on, her husband, as he'll have, I'm sure, a lot of interesting things to share. And maybe that can be a time where we do open it up for question and answers. If anybody wants to call in, that could maybe be a fun show. But either way, this has been cool. You guys have all have been great in the comments. Pretty respectful. I appreciate it. As I mentioned before, I think these conversations are really important because, many of us, we go throughout life and, we're hurt. We are taken advantage of sometimes, especially sometimes when we really have good intentions of really wanting to know God. And so, as I said before, none of us who claim to be followers of the way, none of us are perfect. You know what I mean? All of us are humans and can fail. And I think if nothing else, it's good to be reminded to know that, like, hey, even if you did have a bad experience at a particularly religious organization or a particular church or whatever, does not mean that God himself is not real. Does not mean that who he is imperfect. It just means that people are perfect. And I think the great thing about walking a walk with God is that it is something that you yourself could cultivate individually. Nobody can necessarily tell you how to do that, what that path looks like. Of course, there are certain truths that I feel like they are foundational, but as far as your walk, your journey with getting to that place, your journey with God, it's very personal, it's very unique, and it's something that you get to seek out for yourself. So if that's something that does interest you, if that's something that is calling on you, I hope, if nothing else, this showed you that, they came from a totally different, unconventional background, but God has used them really to create this community that's still growing today, where people are really learning and trying to learn to just be the change, to be the answer. Even if that's something simple as, I'm going to go and I'm going to, it talks about hanging out with orphans and widows. So you may go and you spend time with somebody who maybe they lost their dad, or maybe you provide some housing for some time, you help somebody find a job, like getting involved in people's lives in practical ways, providing marriage counseling, like providing financial support. These are the kind of different ways I think, whether it's individually behind closed doors or no one sees, that we can really start to put our beliefs in action. And I think that matters so much more than just being hypocritical or being judgmental or pointing the finger, which is, I think, is what many people see or what many people believe is the church, or believe or experience the church to be, but that's not actually what it's supposed to be about. So if anything else, I hope this provided some different perspective or just some food for thought. Oh, struggle streaming again. But yeah, appreciate you guys for hanging out. So like I said, stay tuned for other lives and talks and topics of discussion. And we'll talk later. Bye.